Hello, and welcome to STEAM of Consciousness, a program presented by the ARI Podcasting Network and hosted by George Koperna. What is STEAM? STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. During each episode, we will take a few minutes to sit down with professionals in different STEAM-related fields to give them an opportunity to share their story and give their perspectives with the goal of promoting career awareness to potentially interested students, young professionals, and of course, anyone else who shares a fascination with these areas of study. And now, please join us as we tap into the STEAM of Consciousness.
Welcome to STEAM of Consciousness, a presentation by the ARI Podcasting Network. I'm your host, George Koperna, and today we're really happy to have Rachel Wilson here with us. How are you doing today, Rachel?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
And Rachel is a senior at Virginia Tech studying geoscience. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And how are courses going so far this year?
They're good. I'm honestly not even taking that many geoscience classes. I'm getting a minor in geographic information systems. So it's basically all geography classes right now, which a lot of computer looking, but it's definitely it feels very useful. So it's pretty good.
So what got you interested in the geoscience space in the first place? Let's way back machine, maybe to high school, maybe even junior high for some folks. What got the bug?
There's a few things. First, my family's always been pretty outdoorsy. We love national parks growing up. And when I was probably 15, we went out to Moab, Utah, and we had a tour guide who knew everything about the geology. And so that was the first thing that I was like, that would be really cool to do. Like, I want to be able to do that, like go somewhere and be able to tell the history of the entire place. I took an environmental science my senior year, environmental science class my senior year of high school. My first physical science class that I've ever taken, because I pretty much only did bio and chemistry. And I realized I kind of liked all of the integrated sciences together. And I know I hated biology. And so when I was applying to tech, the only College of Science major that you didn't have to take biology for was geology. So it's like not, it sounds so funny when I say it because it's not like I had this like need to study geology. It was just that I know I wanted to study science and I didn't want to do biology. And so I landed in geology. And yeah.
And was Virginia Tech always I'm only going there, or did you cast a little bit wider net when you were looking around?
I definitely casted a wider net. So I was in high school. Most of my high school experience was during COVID. And junior year, my grades sort of wobbled a little bit, like they were not strong. And so I sort of had to like reassess, where I wanted to go. I always was like, I'm going to go to Georgia Tech. That was like my dream school, which out of state acceptance rate is like 6%. And given my SAT scores, it wasn't really going to work out. And then I was like, I'm going to go to UVA. Got waitlisted at UVA. My brother went to Tech. He is a fifth year studying material science right now. And I was like, Tech was always in my mind. I knew I liked it because he went here, but I didn't want to follow him. Like I was very adamant about not following him. And then I realized it's a great school. It's in state because I'm from Northern Virginia. And I was like, it would be dumb not to take this opportunity. So picked it. Best choice I've ever made. Yeah.
Well, it is an absolutely beautiful campus. I'll concede that point to you. And we won't tell any of your Virginia Tech faithful that you thought about UVA. So you decided on tech, and you declared your major going into it, and so geology it was. How was your first year adjustment to post COVID? I mean, that was a really sketchy time with my kids. I know.
Yeah.
Any adjustments to actually in-person classes again and people. Was it a smooth transition?
I mean, I was taking just those entry-level classes. I had, my calculus, chemistry, my entry-level geoscience class, and that was basically it. And so it felt like an easy transition because I didn't have much going on. Learning how to study, I realized that's something I never learned in high school. Like, I don't think I ever learned how to study, which I realized a lot of like higher achieving kids in high school or kids that like really, I loved school. Like I was one of those kids who was excited to go to school. And because of that, I never really felt so challenged in high school. And so getting to college and realizing, wait, this is way harder. I had to learn those study habits. And I think that was definitely the hardest adjustment was, like no one's going to make me sit down and do my homework, or just the hardest part was that you just have to study without like having to turn anything in. Like you're not motivated by, having to submit a homework assignment. Like you just have to sit down and practice what you're learning, which I think for a lot of kids coming from high school to college, like you don't do that in high school. And so that was difficult at the beginning.
And so you talked a little bit about majoring in geoscience or geology. You talked a little bit about um, your interests in GIS systems.
Yeah.
I guess that's redundant, GIS. But you also have an interest in energy policy. And so where did that stem from? Did that start before college, or was an interest point after college began?
So growing up in the DC area, I feel like my dad and a lot of other people I knew worked in policy. Like that was just, always in front of me. And so I always had an interest in politics, and just, always wanted to follow it. Like that was something I was doing on my own, was following policy and politics. My first career goal path was to be a nuclear engineer because I was obsessed with like nuclear energy. I thought that was really, really cool. Realized that I wasn't the best at calculus, probably shouldn't be an engineer. And then but I still had that like love of energy. And I read the Prize by Daniel Yergin. I think
That's
that
correct.
book. And that was like, I was like, oh, oil. That gave me, the whole oil background. And I was really intrigued by all of it because I'm like, it runs the world. Like it literally, we need it. And that's never going to change. And so I realized, oh, I can study geoscience, and maybe get a minor in economics or a minor in public policy or something like that to tie those together, because science policy to me, I feel like there needs to be more scientists in those areas because these concepts are really confusing. And I was hoping that getting a STEM degree would help me be able to understand a lot of those big concepts, which I had an internship last summer where I was doing policy, and I realized that honestly it's way more about like tax codes and funding than the actual science, which was a little disheartening. But at the end of the day, it still is important to know because I don't know, like that's something that all politicians and like anyone that works in like any sort of legislative anything needs translators, like scientific translators for, what exactly do we need, what matters, and, what's going to change. So I would say that I've always had an interest in policy when it comes to energy.
And, I know you interned for a major oil company as a policy intern. And
Mm-hmm.
was that energizing in any way, or you said last summer's was more about tax code and funding, and everything's always about funding to
Yeah.
be did
Right.
that at least push you that, hey, this might be something to explore, or it sounds like you continued on that process?
I mean, so Shell was interesting because at that point, like I was in the government relations side of Shell, and a lot of their focus at that time was in the chemical sector because they were trying to, push all of those carbon neutral or ways to, I guess, decarbonize what all of the oil and natural gas production that they were doing. And so that was interesting to watch how they were trying to invest in other like manufacturing so that they could seem cleaner. Um, and that was interesting business model to me. Like all of these huge oil companies are starting to do that because they realize like if we want to, stay popular, we need to start doing things that, the majority of citizens like. And I think I realized I don't know if I want to go work for a corporation. I think that was sort of, it felt, I don't know. I didn't love that. Not to say that I don't think I could ever do that. I just, as a geologist, especially with my degree, I feel like if I want to do something a little more interdisciplinary, like between the policy and the geology, I think I need to go somewhere smaller where I can work on multiple things. Whereas if I went into Shell or Exxon, I'd probably be siloed into one area and I wouldn't have much room for like, like if I went in as a field geologist, I would be a field geologist. And that's pretty much my job. And I can't really expand on the other interests that I have and strengths. And so that's sort of what I took away from my experience at Shell.
And that's a really great segue, because your next internship, in full disclosure, with my firm, and that had to have been, I'm not going to say it was a better experience, but it was different for sure.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a more techno
Mm-hmm.
policy driven exercise. And would you like to elaborate on what you did a little before we ask more questions?
Yeah, I mean, that experience was crazy, and I what I take away a lot from it was that I cold emailed Ben Roth. Like I just sent him an email and was like, when you came to present to my class at Tech, I really enjoyed like what you talked about it, or how you explained your company. I really enjoyed that. And that sort of like got me, an interview and all of that. And then when I met with Denise, because Ben was like, you and Denise, you seem like a lot of what you talk about is similar to what Denise is interested in. Um, and it was really cool to see Denise's background because she's gone everywhere. And that made me feel better about, not having a one straight line career path. Um, and I really enjoyed that Ben wanted to do something with GIS because at that point I had taken one GIS class, entry level, just basically learning all of the simple things on ArcPro. And I loved it. Like I really enjoyed it. And I was pretty much given like I was given a few, I don't even know how to just like, I was given a few points of things that I needed to do, but pretty much they sort of gave me free reign. And they were like, you can choose to show this however you want. And that was awesome because I knew some arc, but I didn't know a lot. And so I was basically most of the summer sitting around on arc, getting these huge data sets and making them smaller and analyzing them and learning. Like I was making a lot of mistakes, but I was learning how to use Arc because it's one of those, it's like a programming language. Like in order to learn how to do it, you just have to practice. Like you just have to do it. And that gave me an opportunity to, tinker around and make mistakes and try new things and, figure out like 10 different ways to do the same thing and then pick the one that I like the best. Like that, I was able to I had the freedom to do that, which was really nice. Because then when I was at the end putting my presentation together, like I could sit there and say exactly what I did, um, which felt, it felt really nice to be able to accomplish something like that. Do you want me to talk a little about what I actually did?
In just a minute, but I
Okay.
think I think the important underlying thing there is you were expanding your network. You were at an event at Virginia Tech, and
Hmm.
it could have been anybody coming to talk. It could have been
Yeah.
company ABC from the West Coast or the Deep South, and
Hmm.
and then you reached out. You took a chance, and so was that hard, or did that come naturally to you?
I think that I I, I I was reading some article somewhere that was like this girl who applied to Harvard and was like, "There's no way I'm going to get in," and she got in. And ever since like that like article, like basically saying like, "Why not?" Like why not apply to things that are way out of your, you know, range or whatever. Like, and so I sort of just had that why not fallacy where I was like, I need to, why not just email him? Like maybe he won't ever respond to me, but it was worth a shot. I hadn't gotten ARI out of my head since he came to present that because at that point I was really really interested in carbon capture, and I'm from Alexandria. It was in Arlington. I was like, this is awesome. Um, so I wouldn't say it was hard because again I had that like that technological barrier where like sending an email is like it wasn't like I was like trying to go meet with him at an office or something. Like at least I was literally just typing up an email. I didn't expect anything to come of it though. That was the biggest thing. I just sent it and was like, hopefully it lands somewhere. Um, but that was yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that was interesting.
And I'm going to use that forever now. Advanced Resources International, the Harvard of consulting. No, I'm just teasing. Uh, but I think it's important to kind of underline those two things and point at them a little bit, that you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Mhm.
And whatever, in that case, it was you reading an article that spurred you to engage. And the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Right.
And so I think those are two important things for college students, that it's, oh, they're in industry or they're in whatever, they're too busy to respond to lowly me. But Ben had asked to come present at Virginia Tech and said I can, tell them what we're doing. And great, we're for
Mhm.
that. We're for student engagement. We're for um, tech transfer to a certain degree, right? It's,
Mhm.
getting into the nitty gritty sometime might be a little bit over the heads of
Right.
underclassmen, but not always. And so you were able to reach out, you got the job. And what was your task? You said you work with GIS, you learned a
Mhm.
skill, which is awesome. What did you do?
So at that point, I think when I was offered the job, Ben wanted, there was not really a clear path until Denise sort of got brought in and was like, I am trying to do a lot of outreach. Because at that point, the EPA required a lot of like outreach to be done in the communities that you wanted to get projects approved in. I forget exactly. Oh, it was EJ, all of the environmental justice and all of that stuff, basically. And so she was like, I would love to find a way to tie in some environmental justice data with uh, carbon, like a CO2 emissions map. So my beginning task from Ben basically was, can you find carbon emissions um, in the entire United States, mainly focusing on the Southeast because I was just there for a summer, and so the Southeast was a little more important because that seemed to be where a lot of the projects were developing.
Mhm.
And so I pretty much just clipped a lot of that data to just Southeast emissions. And I'm trying to remember exactly where I got my data from. It was
The EPA
That was the
flight.
flight data. The flight data, yes. EPA flight data, which is very detailed, and you could look at your point sources from like where exactly was this coming from, the majority of the emissions. Um, and so after I was able to clip that down and just sort of show, from where are a lot of these emissions coming from, I tied in some geological data, just because to me that's always been really interesting of like um, where your geology is. That was literally what I was interested in. And then Ben was like, well, it's a fair point too to look at. If there's a lot of emissions in one area and this is a good storage basin based on its geology, that's a good place to start a project. And so that was sort of what I did at my first step. My second step was taking a lot of the environmental justice data um, and looking at, historically underinvested communities and disadvantaged communities, which I think we had to change disadvantaged communities when I presented in Houston, but historically underinvested, that's a term that's stayed. And that's basically just, communities that have been historically underinvested from the government. And so at the end, I sort of looked at, per county, how many historically underinvested people per 1,000 people in the county are there. And then I was able to put bubbles that were a little transparent so you could still see the graduated colors of the historically underinvested counties under, but of what the like average emissions of the area is. And it sort of showed that, there's higher CO2 emissions in areas that are historically underinvested. And a lot of these are in the deep South. And so that was something that was interesting to see because it was able to show sort of what Denise wanted, which is if we're going to go into these areas and we are going to start a project, what does this community need? What can we do for them? And what type of resources should I put together beforehand so that when I go down there to present about this project to them, it's at their level. It's going to make them feel excited about this and not try to push back. So it was it was a tool that they wanted to have to help make I guess, is it you're not writing a permit. It's a application. When you're writing your application, to make that process a little easier. Yeah.
And I think you talked about presenting, but that, all our interns do a closing presentation, but you had an opportunity that a lot of undergraduates don't have, and that you went to a professional conference and presented this work. How was that?
That I still, again, I was thinking about that yesterday, and I was like, I should have like been more proud of myself when I did that. I really did not
You
understand,
should have.
what exactly I was doing and how like cool that opportunity was for an undergraduate. I really wasn't, patting myself on the back. So I went abroad in the fall, and I remember I got an email from Ben and Denise when I was still abroad, and I was like sure, 100%, like sure, I'll do that. Like it's in March, like okay, I'll do that. And then when I got back, I was like, oh wow, I'm actually doing this. Like I have to fly from Blacksburg to Houston by myself, which I've flown on a plane before by myself, but it was just like to do something like professional and like that was interesting. And I had to like the flights out of Roanoke, I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to get to my flight. I don't know, but I felt very cool doing it. Um, and I've always loved public speaking. I mean, especially about things I know a lot about. And that project I knew a lot about. And so it was fun for me to be able to do that. Like I really do enjoy that stuff. And I'd never been to Texas, so that was pretty cool. But I that was awesome. And I realize now, like maybe that's something I should put on my resume. I don't know.
It is.
Um,
And you had
yeah.
good interaction at your poster session.
Yeah. That was awesome. And and think ARI, like that was awesome that, that was even an option. That felt really cool. Now I'm realizing that is pretty awesome for an undergraduate to do. And I'm so happy I got the opportunity.
And it's kind of you to thank us, but it was your work. And you did the hard work of getting that accepted there. So, um, and you had a bit different internship experience leading into your senior year. You kind of
Yep.
mentioned. Um, how has that colored your decision making kind of going into your senior year, and what goals you want to achieve this year?
Yeah. So, yeah, I was a policy intern. I was sort of, after my abroad, I sort of, I think I was stuck in the mindset of like, that was great. That's amazing. And I wasn't really looking forward. And so when it came to the summer, I was sort of behind on all the internship stuff. And I reached out to a friend of mine who, um, he works at the DOE. And I was like, is there any opportunities at the DOE? And in the current state of, the a lot of the bureaucracies, there was a lot of mass firings and hiring freezes. So there wasn't a lot going on and a lot of funding happening for students in the DOE or the DOI, which is sort of where I was looking. And so I ended up, my resume got passed to, this, what's it called? It was a consulting firm, a policy consulting firm, pretty much, that does a lot of stuff in the financial sector, but wants to expand in the energy sector. And so I was sort of just like the energy policy specific intern following a bunch of congressional hearings. So my entire summer was spent covering congressional hearings, which was very interesting, but a little repetitive and a little out of my wheelhouse. I mean, I took government in high school. Um, but past that, I knew nothing about writing legislation, or I knew nothing about the process of passing legislation, or, that a lot of the times they're just calling in experts to come talk, and that was really interesting to me. Sort of made me realize I don't know if that's what I want to do. I could still see myself in, maybe the DOE. I've always been really interested in the office of fossil fuels and carbon management. That's always been interesting. But right now, there still is sort of a hiring freeze. Like it is very hard to get a job unless you were already in the federal sector. It's really hard to get hired there right now, or unless you've got like 10 years of experience, which, an entry level job is hard to come by right now in those areas too. And a lot of the geoscience stuff funding is getting cut. So I wanted to go right into the government after. Now I'm trying to reassess because I don't know how easy that would be to find a job. Um, I don't know if I want to do full policy again. I don't think that's where I'm going to go. I also don't think I want to do full field work and full, just entry level geologist. I'm sort of in that weird in between where I don't know exactly. I think that GIS could be more of where I want to go. I really enjoy data analysis, and I'm pretty creative when it comes to it. And I've gotten pretty good with ArcPro, and so I could see myself doing something like that, at least right out of college, just to gain experience there, and then maybe go somewhere else after. But right now, that seems to be the most interesting point.
So you're leaning to entering the job having the
Yes, I
spark, if
think.
you will, versus going to graduate school. And
Yeah.
was graduate school even a consideration for you at some point?
Yes, yes. I 100% was like, because I love school. I've always loved school. I could stay in school forever. I realized though, like I said, when I was job hunting, and I've talked to a few people, post grad, and a lot of people in my department, and they've said, get some experience and then go back if you really want to. Unless like I went through a phase of wanting to be a lawyer briefly, and that's something that I would maybe have done right after I graduated. But I also don't have enough interest in a certain topic within the geosciences field to get a thesis. Like I never wanted to pursue a thesis. And then getting a master non-thesis degree, that probably would be really helpful, but I would then come out with no experience. And then it would be like finding a job with no experience, with more, money spent on school. It felt right now not what I want to do. We'll see. Maybe I will go back. I mean, I really do go back. And what I'm hoping is that hopefully I can find a job one day that will pay for me to go to grad school. Um, but
They're out there. They're hard to
yeah,
find. There.
yeah. But as of now, no grad school. I mean, maybe I'll apply to a few, um, if I'm really feeling like I don't know what I want my career to be.
So
But
you're a senior,
yep.
expecting to graduate in May.
Hmm.
How early have you started your job search? You've started already, probably, right?
I have. I mean, I started looking this summer, honestly, just because I really wanted to go in. I was so content. I was like, I'll go to the USGS. I'll do something in DOI. I'll do something in DOE. And then, with the current administration, it just doesn't feel like they're going to be taking a lot of entry level people. That doesn't seem like they're, I don't know what they're going to do. And so I've also always wanted to know. I've also always known what I wanted to do, or at least I've thought I've known what I wanted to do. And this is like the first time in my life that I don't really know. And so I've sort of just been looking on all of like the job finding websites for college students and seeing, where is this? Because that's another big thing is you have to pick sort of where you want to go. Like, do I want to stay in Northern Virginia? Do I want to stay down here? Do I want to go anywhere else? And that's another question that I'm like, I don't know yet. And so luckily, the good thing about this major though is that it's way more relaxed than, let's say, marketing or finance, where they like can start locking in their jobs right now. Um, it feels like a lot of my friends in this major have gotten jobs in, May, right when they graduate, which is stressful, but at least like that's the vibe of this major in this science, is that it's not like they're going to ask for a geologist and then be like, yeah, you can start in a year from now, like job openings don't seem to happen like that. um, but I'm going to do some career fairs. I'm going to the mining and minerals engineering career fair, because there's a few companies there that want mapping, a lot of geoscience and mapping background, which I'm like, that's for me. So we'll see. I'm trying to stress about it though, because I feel like that's not going to do any good. I'm looking, I'm not intensely searching, because right now my job is, to finish my degree. And I really want to focus on finishing my degree with good grades. Yeah.
Well, look, it in anything, you have to decide what size net you want to throw out there. And
Yeah.
um, having someone in my family that's gone through this whole process very recently, I can tell you that she didn't get a job offer till after graduation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that will be you, but
Hmm.
uh, just to kind of emphasize your point that some of them aren't getting them until May. And
Yeah.
um, who knows? I wish you nothing but great luck in your career search. And hopefully you continue to stay in touch, and maybe we'll check back in maybe a little bit later next semester and see how it's going. Because I think having that color and that more specificity around, your senior campaign and your job search, and it's really the stresses / pressures that come with that, or how you colors how you navigate it. And so I really appreciate your time today. I'd like to close with one thing. Normally I ask, what do you love about your job? But because you're at Tech, what do you love about Virginia Tech?
I love that there's someone for everyone. I've walked around this campus and it feels like everyone's got a friend. Like there are some clubs that do some really interesting things that I would never be a part of, like live action role playing with lightsabers in the park. But there's a huge group of them and they all love it. And I love that there's communities here for everyone. That makes me feel really happy because I feel like friendship and socialization is like the most important thing. So that's awesome about tech.
Well, we should all LARP a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yes, maybe.
Well, Rachel, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with me and chat about your college experiences so far and what's driven you to where you are. We thank you. This has been a presentation of the ARI Podcasting Network, produced by a Virginia Tech alum, Ryan Kessler. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to listen to new episodes of Stream of Consciousness, available on your preferred podcast listening station.